Good morning, Minister Chikunga. I am Tseofatso Mawa. It's an honor to have the opportunity to present to you today on the exciting advancement of our mobility service project aimed at transforming transportation in our developing country. In a developing country, the government is keen to improve urban mobility and reduce foot traffic congestion in its capital city. They have identified the implementation of a mobility as a service platform as a potential solution to address these challenges. The mobility as a service platform aims to integrate existing public transit systems, bike sharing options into a single digital platform accessible to residents and visitors. Let me introduce to you first the stakeholder identifications that will be involved in this mobility as a service platform. First of all, we'll have government agencies. Government agencies include the Transport Department, the local municipalities. With transportation departments, they will be responsible for the overall transportation policies, regulations, and planning, and they may need to change regulations or develop new policies in order to accommodate mobility as a service platform. With local two municipalities, they will be responsible for urban planning, infrastructure development, public transport services, and collaborating local municipalities with mass mobility as a service platform providers, which will help to integrate services with existing transportation networks. Then we'll also have non-governmental organizations and advocacy groups as stakeholders, in which they will be in favor of sustainable transportation and solutions and may support the implementation of the MES project. Then we'll also have academic and research institutions, which are universities, for example, which will conduct research on transportation trends, user behavior, and the impact of mobility as a service on urban mobility. They can collaborate with stakeholders to evaluate and improve MES implementation. Then we'll have public transit authorities and private sector entities. With public transit authorities, they will entail of bus or rail operators, transportation regulatory bodies. With bus or rail operators, those are the operators that provide public transportation services and may develop partnerships with mass providers to integrate their services into the platform. Then with transportation regulatory bodies, they will ensure compliance with safety licensing and other regulations governing transportation services. Then in regards to the private sector as a stakeholder identification, we'll have mobility service providers, which will be the companies that develop and operate the mobility as a service platform. They will be responsible for integrating various transportation modes, developing the app, and managing user data. Then ride-sharing companies, which also falls under private sector entities. This will be companies such as Uber, Bolt, InDriver, which will collaborate with mass providers to offer ride-sharing services through the platform. Private sector entities will also have payment service providers, which will facilitate transactions and payment processing within the MES platform. And also they will have bike sharing and scooter sharing companies, which will provide micro mobility options that can be integrated into the MES platform. In regards to stakeholder identification, we'll also have potential users, which will be the commuters, tourists, businesses. These are the individuals who use transportation services to travel to work, school, or other destinations or explore the area which they are visiting. Then moving on to needs assessment. Needs assessment will entail of existing transportation infrastructure, digital connectivity, diverse user demographics. Firstly on, we'll touch on the existing transportation infrastructure. With the existing transportation infrastructure, we have a challenge in which many developing countries face inadequate transportation infrastructure, including poorly maintained roads, limited public transit networks, and insufficient last mile connectivity options. Then a requirement for this will be improving and expanding transportation infrastructure to support the integration of diverse transportation modes offered by mass platforms such as public transit, ride sharing, and micromobility services. Moving on to digital connectivity, which is the second point of needs assessment. Our challenge with that is that digital connectivity may be unevenly distributed in developing countries with limited internet access and mobile network coverage in rural areas and informal settlements. A requirement for this would be ensuring reliable digital connectivity infrastructure, including internet access and mobile network coverage to enable widespread access to mass platforms and services. Moving on to the third point is the diverse user demographics. A challenge for this will be developing countries have diverse user demographics, including populations with various demographics which are influential. For example, income levels, education levels, and transportation needs. A requirement for this would be designing mass platforms and services that cater to the diverse needs and preference of different user segments, including low-income individuals, persons with disabilities, and residents of informal settlements. Furthermore, for the feasibility study, our feasibility study will entail of economic feasibility study, technical feasibility study, operational feasibility study, and regulatory feasibility study. With regards to the economic feasibility study, which is our first point, we will conduct a cost-benefit analysis to evaluate the financial implications of implementing the MESS project, considering infrastructure, investment, technology, development, operational expenses, and revenue streams. Technical feasibility study, which is our second point, it will evaluate the technical requirements and capabilities of the MESS platform, covering software development, data management, integration with existing transportation systems, and compatibility with various devices and networks. Operational feasibility, which will be our third point, it will define the service delivery model for the MESS platform, including operational processes, service levels, customer support mechanisms, and partnerships with service providers. Then our last point for the feasibility study will be the regulatory feasibility study, which will analyze the regulatory landscape governing transportation services in the target country, including licensing requirements, fair regulations, safety standards, data privacy laws, and consumer protection regulations. Moving on, we all know that there's risks involved in everything that we do, meaning that for our MESS platform, we need to identify our own risks. With regards to this, uh, our risk identification brought us to a conclusion that we have risks such as limited digital infrastructure, regulatory barriers, user acceptance and adoption, financial sustainability. With limited digital infrastructure, inadequate digital infrastructure may hinder mass platforms access, particularly in rural areas. Expand digital infrastructure, partner with technology providers, and develop offline functionalities. Um, Expand digital infrastructure will be our mitigation strategy for this risk. Then moving on to our second point, which is our regulatory barrier. A challenge for this will be complex regulatory environments and outdated transportation laws may pose barriers to the implementation and operation of the MESS platform, including licensing requirements, fair regulations, and data private laws. A mitigation for this risk will be engaging with government agencies, policymakers, and industry stakeholders to advocate for supportive regulatory frameworks that facilitate MESS deployment, uh, providing policymakers with evidence-based research and best practices from other jurisdictions to inform regulatory reform efforts. Then moving on to our third point, which is uh, user acceptance and adoption. With that, a challenge will be cultural attitudes, preferences, and behaviors related to transportation and technology adoption, which may impact the acceptance and adoption of the MES platform among diverse user groups. The strategy for this will be conducting extensive user research and engagement activities to understand cultural nuances and user preferences. In regards to our last point, which is our financial sustainability, a challenge for this would be ensuring financial sustainability of the MES platform amidst uncertain revenue streams, high operational costs, and competition from existing transportation providers. Our strategy for this to mitigate this risk will be developing diversified revenue streams, including subscription fees, transaction fees, advertising revenue, and data monetization. We will also explore opportunities for public-private partnerships and subsidy programs to support initial implementation costs and promote affordability for users, particularly low-income individuals. Then moving on, I will now introduce to you our project breakdown, which will be entailing of our key tasks, milestones, budget estimation, stakeholder engagement, etc. So let's touch on our key task for this project, as I'll break it down so that you'll be able to understand it in a better way, in which you will not be confused. Our key task will be the MES platform aims to provide seamless, convenient, and sustainable transportation options, targeting individuals who rely on transportation services for daily travel needs and visitors exploring the city. Our milestones for this project is that we plan to finish our feasibility study in 3 weeks, which will be conducted with the assistance of stakeholders from universities, the government, and internal researchers within our own organization. We will negotiate with telecommunication companies to implement data consumption savings while on MES. Implementation of offline real-time location tracking services for customers who might have run out of data in the app. Meetings will be conducted twice on a weekly basis to give feedback on the current state of the project, and we also aim to launch the mobility as a service application in 28 weeks. Moving further on, I will now introduce the budget estimation for this project, in which it will entail of salaries, marketing, resources, implementation, feasibility study, team building, and partnerships. Here we'll have a breakdown of the costs that will be located to each of the categories that I've mentioned before. For salaries, we'll have 150,000. Marketing will spend 200,000. For resources, 150,000 has been allocated. For the implementation of the MES application, 200,000 has been allocated. For the feasibility study, which will conduct of our research, 100,000 has been allocated. For team building to ensure trust and drive and to remember the goals and to motivate the employees, 15,000 has been allocated. Partnership agreements, we have invested 185,000 for this project. Then moving on, for our stakeholder engagement, we will hold physical meetings twice a week to engage with stakeholders like government agencies, transportation providers, and technology partners. We will communicate with our suppliers via email and phone. We will also implement team building activities and weekly targets for employees to enhance motivation. We will collaborate with analytical advertising companies to forecast future MES demand based on launch outcomes. Then moving on, we will have a project planning, which is our last slide for this presentation. Our project planning will have a timeline of 8 weeks, but it will entail of the planning and requirements gathering phase, pilot phase, and resource allocation. With planning and requirements gathering phase, which will take 8 weeks, we will conduct a market analysis to identify user needs. competitor analysis, and market trends. We will also gather user requirements through surveys, interviews, and focus groups. We will also define technical specifications for the MES platform, including software, architecture, and data management. We will also assess regulatory requirements and compliance considerations. For our pilot phase, which will have a timeline of 18 weeks, we will implement a pilot program to test the MES platform in a controlled environment. We will develop and deploy a limited version of the MES platform in a selected geographic area. We will integrate with existing transportation systems such as public transit, ride sharing, and bike sharing. And we'll also conduct user testing and gather feedback for interaction. Our resource allocation will have a timeline of 4 weeks, in which we will have a project manager who will oversee project planning, execution, and monitoring. We will also have a technical team which will develop and maintains the MES platform. We'll have operations teams which will manage day-to-day operations, customer support, and service delivery. We'll also have a marketing team which executes marketing campaigns and promotional activities. Furthermore, we'll have partnership teams which will establish partnerships and collaborations with various stakeholders. And finally, we'll have a financial team which will manage the budget, funding, and financial planning. With that all being said, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present to you about the Mobility as a Service platform. Thank you.